Welcome to the Insomnia Project. Sit back, lie back, relax, and listen as we have a calm conversation on mundane topics. And I'm doing my best not to get excited, but we have in the studio my favorite co-host, Nidhi Khanna. Welcome to the Insomnia Project.
Hi, Marco. It's so good to be here.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm going to use the word groovy.
Oh, I love that.
Right? I feel like groovy.
Groovy is awesome.
Yeah.
Before we start, I have to make a correction from last week's show.
Ooh,
So
okay.
Nidhi, you'll be able to speak of this, I'm sure, but I said English muffins and crumpets were the same thing, and they're not.
What?
I know.
Why would you even go? What?
I don't know.
Marco.
I don't even
Marco.
know. Knowing that we have a lot of listeners in the UK and a lot of people who just love to eat, one of our American listeners immediately contacted me and said, "Hey, just so you know, crumpets and English muffins are not the same thing." And I was like, yeah, I guess I just said that, but I love them both is the problem. And in that moment of weakness, I just said that they were the same thing.
Well, and also I feel like by now audience should be able to recognize that anything we say on this podcast has not been fact-checked,
No,
nor can be taken as fact.
no. And I apologize to anyone who is, offended or a fan of crumpets or a fan of English muffins. But crumpets batter is a loose batter, Nidhi, and English muffin batters are from a firm dough. Crumpets are only cooked on one side, whereas English muffins are more like a bread and toasted on both sides. So then I went in on a deep crumpet dive.
I want to hear a little bit about this.
I want to make crumpets now. Now that I've
Okay.
made this mistake, I want to make crumpets. And the thing about making crumpets, it only uses, base ingredients. So like a bit of yeast, some milk, flour, and a couple of other things, maybe some salt and whatnot. But you need to have a crumpet circle. So you need kind of like a metal ring, a crumpet ring that you put on your pan. So when you put the dough in it, it stays in that circular shape.
Right, because otherwise it would kind of come out flat and pancakey.
Right, and then you would need something to cut it out. But from what I've seen, the real crumpet makers, those crumpet makers who take their crumpets seriously, they have crumpet rings. So I was like, I don't think I need to go out and buy crumpet rings. Like these one-use items, both you and I are not huge fans of. And moreover, Amanda...
Marco, you love this stuff. Like the fact that you have not gone online and purchased this thing yet is actually quite fascinating. Are you okay? Have you been ill? Is that why?
No, I had to record with you is why I didn't look into it. I should correct myself and say Amanda is really not a huge fan of
your one use items.
She really, I had to give away, I told you I had a peanut butter jam spoon that one, like it was kind of like a spatula, and one end it was like purple for jam, and on the opposite end was, yellow for peanut butter. So you would use one end and one on the other.
Marco.
And we had it, and she's like, "You never use this." I'm like, "But it's messy when I use it. But when I use it, I do use it." And she's like, "We're getting rid of this. Figure it out. If you don't use it in this next month, it's gone." And now I'm sad that I no longer have my peanut butter and jelly spoon, or spatula. So I'm committing to not getting the crumpet rings. But I read one of the hacks is you can use a tuna can. So once you get a can of tuna, you just have to cut the bottom end of it. But the problem is I can't use my can opener because my tuna can is rounded on the bottom end. So it doesn't have that lip to cut forward. So
Couldn't you use like a cookie cutter?
Yeah, I could. That was one of the things, but our cookie cutters are like small little snowflakes.
Baby cookie, right.
Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, so I'll figure it out. I'm sure I will figure it out. But if you have a crumpet tool hack for me, please let us know in either our Facebook or our Instagram. But yeah, I love crumpets and I equally love English muffins. Where do you stand on that?
I am more of an English muffin person.
Oh, okay.
Because I like having, this is controversial. I feel like we're going to get a lot of mail after this, but or at least you are, because
I'll
my
drive to I'm
co-hosting,
gonna drive
my
to your house and
co-hosting.
I'm gonna put it under your door.
Um, I like putting like an egg and cheese on top of like I like making the little fake egg McMuffin with my muffins, my
Sure.
English muffins. Crumpets to me, it's like I'd rather have a pancake.
Okay. Okay. That's fair.
I'd rather have a pancake. Also, like, what do you put on crumpets? It always like
Oh,
just jam.
you can put this is like a nod to last week's show, but you can put butter and jam or honey and jam. You can put a lot of things on a crumpet, I believe. And I think a crumpet goes well with tea as well as a scone, if not better.
Hmm.
And that's where I'm going to be getting mail for saying that. But
Well, I
yeah,
know it's a very
yeah.
controversial topic.
Let's get off this controversial topic.
Okay.
And I just want to say this. I bought some geraniums for next to nothing the other day. My aunt had told my mother that the geraniums were on sale at one of the local grocery stores. And so she was like, they're on sale, they're going fast. My aunt actually had to go to one of those grocery stores. They were out and she went to another one, and that's where the lead was on the geraniums. So I went on that geranium train and I bought some geraniums, and now they're in front of my house. And I love geraniums because they remind me of my grandmother.
So I'm just going to pause here for a
Hmm.
moment. And do you remember when we first started this show and we would start talking? So Marco and I would start talking about something so boring, and we would end up having to cut because we would just laugh.
Yeah.
And here we are all these years later, and you can tell me a story about geraniums, and I actually find it fascinating,
Yeah.
which is just goes to show
Yeah.
how much we've evolved as people.
I'm telling you. Um, but yeah, I love geraniums. I don't know where you sit on the geranium fence.
I'll be honest, I don't really care for them.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I find them kind of standard. They're like
Okay.
a basic flower,
Yeah. But they're a
but
workhorse. They're the kind of flowers they can hold up to heat, to
this
drought,
is
and
true.
they're always flowering. And for stoops or to dress window boxes, I think there's nothing as nice as a geranium.
I also, as you may know, don't really have I'm not good with like names of flowers
Okay.
and plants.
Yeah.
Like I have a bunch of plants in my home and I still don't know what they are. And then
Oh,
someone will come over and be like, "Oh, your this tree is really going strong." I don't
do
know
you
what
have
I
a
do.
do you have a Z plant or a Z plant? A
I don't
ZZ
even know
plant?
what that is. What is that?
It's this plant that like is very sought after these days. Like the last year it was like you couldn't get this plant.
Hmm.
Type it in your computer and you'll see what I'm talking about. But this Z plant has a real definite sort of shape to its leaves. And I
Okay.
have one and it's growing strong. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a clipping of it and I'm going to get that started
Oh,
for you.
yes.
And I'm going to get you a Z plant started.
Oh,
And
wow.
and I'm also going to cut you a monstera. Do you have a monstera at home?
Maybe. I don't
The
have the Z plant,
okay.
Monstera.
Okay, the monstera is like that tropical plant that has the holes in it that whenever you see sort of images of jungles or
Oh,
Florida
yeah.
or
Look at that.
yeah, that's another one that people are kind of
Going for?
going for and they grow really big. So if you have the space for it, I'll get you a clipping and you can
Yes,
have that too.
please.
Yeah. So it's like a little
Please.
a little plant exchange.
I mean, I think I have, I don't even know what I have, but
Mhm.
I need to get one of those apps where you point it at the plant and it tells you what it
Yeah.
is and when to water it and things like
Mhm.
that. I just go by my gut feeling on when to water
I
these
know.
plants. And
Like
yeah,
orchids, for example, some people are really good with orchids. We have them
mine
and
always die.
no, they don't enjoy our place. So I'll always
No.
bring my orchid once it's stopped blooming to my mom who has the orchid thumb.
Oh,
And she's got orchids. They're so beautiful. And then she bought like a silk orchid bud or flower that looks so much like a real orchid that when her orchids aren't in bloom, she puts that there. And when you go into her house, you're like, "You always have orchids." And she goes, "No, this is the fake one that I put in when
oh,
they."
see,
Yeah,
we found the secret.
yeah. But
Um,
her orchids are gorgeous. And I think she just throws an ice cube a week in it. And she's like, that's
oh,
all you do. You just let an ice cube melt in it and you're good to go.
huh. I didn't even know that orchids could rebloom. I thought once they stop blooming, they're done.
No, they rebloom every year.
Oh, whoops.
Exactly. Kind of like the Christmas or the Easter cactus. You know that one? That that cactus? I guess not. Okay.
I think I've killed many orchids before their time.
But you have that really nice snake plant that looks kind of like like a cylinder and
Yes.
has that one there. I every time I come to your place, I'm like, that's a cool plant, and you that one likes you.
Yeah, that one likes me because it's low maintenance and
Hmm.
it knows it's just going to get what it gets.
Right.
And it's just going to take that
But
and be
that's
happy
just
with it.
indicative of the type of plant that suits your needs, right? You need to get the plant that suits your what you can offer the plant. And if you don't have time for a plant, you need the plants that are like, just leave me in this corner. Don't give me too much light. Don't give me too much water. Don't look at me
This
too
sounds like
much.
every relationship I've been in.
Oh
I
my
feel
goodness.
like I feel like my therapist has something to say about that.
Oh my goodness. Oh, that's really funny.
Uh,
Uh, and
but you were
yeah.
telling me
Mhm.
before when we were chatting, a bit about this board game
Okay.
that you have become obsessed with Amanda, in terms of playing, which
Hmm.
is now I forgot the name of it. I don't know if you told
It's
me the
called
name of it.
Wingspan.
Oh yeah, Wingspan. And I think the listeners need to know about this
Okay.
because
So I gave a little nod about Wingspan on last week's show, and people have been curious about it. So I don't know how you feel about board games. I've always been a big fan of board games.
what type of board game?
Anything that's not too long. I don't like the ones that take forever and that are
Yeah.
slow paced. That's not for me. Give me one
Okay. Yep.
that is like, you're in and out in less than an hour.
But like, do you mean like Scrabble or Hungry Hungry Hippo? Like, what do
It's good.
you?
Good. I'm not a fan of Scrabble because it takes too long between
Okay.
players. And I just don't like the precision of it where it's like you can't use that word or you can't use that
Right.
one. I'm like, no.
So like
And
Operation
love that. I love games that I also like games that are like, you're moving pegs around.
Candyland.
Sure, but more adult games. You're bringing these really like Hungry Hungry If I haven't played in 40 years. But sure, I like that works for me. I like ones that are a little bit more involved.
Battleship.
Sure, like, but even more so than that,
Mm.
like a let's say
Risk.
a Monopoly, a Risk, a Clue,
Oh,
and
I
some of
thought
these.
Risk takes forever though.
So you haven't played a board game in a long time, I'm gonna guess, based on the games that you're bringing forward. Is that fair to
Listen,
say?
I am a child of the 80s and
Okay,
90s, and
great.
those are the board games that I know.
So like, there's
What is the one where you put the ping in and it goes plonks down?
oh,
Like Plinko?
like
No,
Plinko's on
I feel like I just
Price
said a
is
bad
Right.
word. Oh,
No,
okay.
Plinko's on The Price is Right. That's the game that
Okay.
they have there. Are you thinking Connect Four?
Oh, maybe that's it. Yeah, yeah, with the red and
Yes.
the blue. Okay, yeah, Connect Four.
So those are kind of kids games, right? So there's more adult board games out there. I got Jaws as one of the games a
Oh,
couple years ago, and I really enjoyed that. And I have Kings of Tokyo, some monster games. I have this You've Got Crabs game that's fun. So there's a
oh.
bunch of different
That
games.
sounds like something again.
Yeah, I know
Your doctor would probably
yeah,
need to speak to you
it's a
about.
weird title, but you basically there's all these different cards that have different types of crabs on them, and if
Okay.
you're trying to not get one type of crab, I guess I'm not sure. Anyways, I haven't played that one in a while,
Okay.
but I did get Wingspan, and I can't wait to play it with you because it sounds like the worst, or it sounds like a game that you and I would not be interested in. But once you get playing, you get involved, and basically you're trying to put these birds in three different habitats in the wetlands, the grasslands, and in trees. And each bird will give you different abilities. So, for example, turns out the woodpecker is now one of my favorite cards because all these different woodpeckers have some really cool things you can do, but most of them you can only do them once. Whereas these other birds, like the nuthatch, when your peg goes on that card, because you work backwards, your nuthatch will allow you to do a certain thing. So it'll allow you to get like an extra egg or some more food, or it'll allow you to tuck a card beneath it for an extra point. So depending on the birds you get, their point values are different. So something like a swan, a trumpeter swan is like high points, like 8 or 9 points, but your basic titmouse is like next to nothing, or your pigeon dove is like 0 points. And so, it's very strategic on how you want your birds in your habitat and how many eggs you want to lay on the birds. And so you point it out at the end against your partners or against the people you're playing against, their bird habitats and the birds that they have. It's quite exciting, I have to say.
Marco, this reminds me of the pickling episode
Okay.
where I actually started to fall asleep while we were recording. And I think similar sensations are coming up for me as we describe Wingspan. And I hope for the listeners as well. I hope they're done and
It,
fast asleep by now.
it's a very calm game. And I will say this, Nidhi, we'll play it before we go to bed, and I find it very relaxing. So it kind of puts me in that relaxed state. And I'm finding I'm able to fall asleep quicker after having played a round of Wingspan.
Well, see, it's like the Insomnia Project of board games.
Yeah. And what's neat, and I just did this moments ago actually, you can play a single player and you play against the game itself. So they have like these cards that allow for every turn you make, the game does a turn. And so at the end, you're playing against this invisible automa, is what they call it. Like
Oh.
this player that doesn't exist, the game.
So how
And
do you sorry, how do you win or lose?
it's all point based. So you get
Okay.
a
Okay.
point for every egg that's on your birds,
Right.
a point for every tucked card that's behind your birds.
Okay.
Each bird has a point value. As I mentioned, the swan
Right.
is like 9 points. Your your owl is about 4 to 6 points,
Hmm.
and your smaller birds can be 2 points, maybe three, maybe one.
And do
And
you have to reach like a threshold of points
no,
quickest or
no, it's 4 rounds. So you have four
Oh, I see
rounds,
4 rounds. Okay.
and
Okay.
the first round is 8 plays. So you got 8 little cubes you use. It diminishes by one by the next round, and so on. So you diminish by one after each round, and at the fourth round, you you tally your points.
If you had to make up a board game, I
Oh,
always find it really fascinating
hmm,
how people think of
sure.
these games. Like, is there a science to it? There must be like a board game. Like, how do you become a board game maker?
There's it's fascinating you should say that, but you've got these board game developers, and I was just on a site, and they were featuring board game developers who are people of color,
Hmm.
because I guess they were trying to get representation in their particular board gaming empire or whatever you call it. What they're doing. So I was really like going down this really interesting wormhole of learning about board game developers. Now, they're all kind of, people who love board games, and
Right.
they seem very intelligent and very, you know, um, they they think through things. So I don't know if I would be such a great board game developer because I would just want it done. But yeah, there's a
Same.
lot that goes into board, and then you have to sort of beta test it and see where it works and where it doesn't. And
Like, yeah, because I could imagine you would have to really be all about the rules
yes,
and you would have to think of so many different scenarios. And you're right. Like if you and I made a board game,
yeah.
it it would be a disaster
Oh,
because
it'd be like
one
there's
of it would
holes in it. There'd be like there's
there'd be no rules. Like basic number one question that someone had, like, player one and player two, who goes first, would be like, go by your intuition. Like,
yeah.
I don't know, figure it out. We're not
Do
gonna baby you in here.
do the most logical thing. So
Yeah.
Nidhi, I ran into this situation where in Wingspan you have 5 dice to roll, and
Okay.
they are on those dice are either worms, wheat, mice, or fish or berries, and each one represents what your bird might need, right? But if you have when you roll them, if you have two of the same, so doubles or more of the same, you can re-roll. But I wasn't sure if I could re-roll during my turn of trying to get what item I need, whether it be a mouse or a fish, or if I had to wait till at the end of my turn. So
Mm.
there's a Facebook group, and I typed it on the Facebook group, and Nidhi, I have never received responses so quick. And so, like, if you do this, you can do this. But if you do this, remember to do this, and don't forget. And they were really helpful. I'm very grateful. But man, did I get an answer right away?
Wow.
Yeah, people take this
Wow.
serious. They take it serious. Now, I
Did
will.
you go ahead, go ahead.
No, 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 please.
No, I was gonna ask you a question,
Okay,
but
I was going to say what I think people do, or if I was a board game designer, what I'm noticing now that I'm going down board game lane is they tend to pick a theme and they stick to it. So, for example, there's a lot of like board games that deal with train travel or travel.
mm,
So, like Ticket to Ride, where you're building trains across the world. And then there's some that are like, they deal with countries or cities,
mhm,
or they deal with nature and dinosaurs or whatnot, right? So it really depends on what resonates with you. And what I'm noticing is that there's not a lot of board games that take place in our area of the world in Canada. So I would probably develop something that had that kind of theme to it,
mhm.
or at least no board games that I know. Or because you and I both like underwater stuff, you and I
Mm.
would develop a scuba underwater type game.
Game.
Yeah.
I really like the deception type board games.
Okay.
Like, I like Clue. I
Sure.
like, that type of stuff. So I feel like I would develop something that is mystery related
Yeah, because
or who done it.
you're a big fan of mystery games,
Yeah.
like sorry,
Yeah.
mystery novels
Yeah.
and
That genre is my
yeah,
go-to genre for sure.
yeah.
But
There's
what
a
I what go no, no, go ahead.
there's a bunch. There's one called Sherlock Holmes
Oh.
where you can. I think it's such, and I could be wrong, so take this with a grain of salt. But I think you can only play it so many times because you solve a mystery, and once you've solved that X amount of mysteries, you've played the game.
Play the game.
But supposedly it's amazing because it keeps coming up over and over again as like one of the best, I think, solo player games. Meaning you can play it by yourself or
With
2-person
others.
games. Yeah.
Well, when things open up again,
Mhm.
we should go to that board game
Oh,
cafe
yeah.
place.
Yeah, there's a board game cafe called Snakes and Lattes near both of us
Yes.
actually, and
Yes.
where you can just go in and pay by the hour for as long as you stay, and you can play as many games as you want. Different games, they have like hundreds and hundreds of them,
Yep.
and you
That would
can
be
drink your
fun.
coffee and have a little snack. It's yeah, it's pretty awesome.
We shall go there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And maybe even play Hungry Hungry Hippo.
Sure. Listen. Those games are classic. I love them. I used to love Mousetrap when I was a kid. That was the
Oh
game
yeah.
I liked. Yeah.
Nice.
But
Nice.
I was never into, these longer games. Like Monopoly was never my thing.
I
Yeah, it
was
was
never really into Monopoly either. I agree.
Clue. I'm more of a Clue fan or a Risk fan. Yeah, those are more the games that I would play. Yeah. Now, would you play games when you were a kid on rainy days, or what was your rainy day activity,
Go
let's say?
to?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question, Marco. I would read a lot.
Okay.
We used to have video games.
Oh, cool.
So what did we have? We had it wasn't Sega, it was Nintendo 64.
Okay.
That's what we had at home. No, Super Nintendo. We had Super Nintendo,
And
sorry.
what was your video game to play?
Super Mario Brothers was really boring.
Oh, okay. No,
I
but
liked
you like the
liked
classic
my
game.
little yeah, I like the classics. I also liked Mortal Kombat because I learned how to do one trick with one character that I would just do over and over again.
Okay.
And I would just wait for new people to come over and play Mortal Kombat with me so that I could do that one trick and win. Because I wouldn't be able to win against my older brother
I see.
because
I
he
see.
knew more tricks than me.
And who was this character you would play? And only you could play it. You'd have friends over and you'd be like, no, I'm that character.
Yeah, it was oh, I forgot the name. Scorpion? Scorpion, I think.
Okay.
He had like a yellow robe and you pressed back, back, B, and that would allow you to like shoot something out of his hand
Okay.
and get the person to come close to you, and then you would uppercut.
I see.
Very violent games,
Sure. Yeah.
actually.
Well, I
But
think that's why it gets its name Mortal Kombat, right?
yeah, fair enough. Fair
Oh my
enough.
goodness.
But yeah, but I usually just played my Super Mario Brothers.
And thank you, Nidhi. We'll end it there for now on Mortal Kombat. Because this is a longer episode, we're going to do it in 2 parts. So this is the first part of the the episode, I should say, that I've done with Nidhi. And she will be back next week with part 2. But because we hit our time but weren't finished our conversation, we decided to just continue and make a 2-parter. So I hope you enjoy this particular episode. For anyone who's on our Patreon, they got to hear the whole episode early. So if you are interested in joining our Patreon, the Insomnia Project, please do so. You can find the link in the show notes, and we would be happy to have you there and provide additional content. Until next week, we hope that you were able to listen to this particular episode and sleep.